He also manages the data at the Emporium Math Lab, and he is presenting on something that is also very relevant for me. This entire conference is made for me, guys. Converting a PDF calculus textbook to accessible. Please welcome Mr. Tim Prescott. Yeah.
Where's the remote? Oh, there.
Take this mic. This one's low on battery, so I'm going to check it on the charger first.
Okay. I want to talk about how we made our PDF textbook accessible. Let's see. So just to place everything in its time, tech started in late 70s. The Americans with Disabilities Act is the main legal framework driving all of this. Was in 1990. PDF came out in the early 90s. Which I guess means we've been using tech to create PDFs for a decade before PDF existed. And then more recently, about a decade ago, we switched our calculus book to an open source version. We've been really pleased with it. It's full 3 semesters all the way through multivariable calculus. PDF finally came out with a second version that has better math support. The LaTeX team began working on accessibility, and now all of that needs to come together to make the textbook accessible. So I kind of think of this in 4 different pieces. There's the preamble that we've been talking about. We need to look at images. We'll talk about tables and then everything else. What's a little bit odd is that for the amount of time that we need to spend on the preamble, that's where most of the accessibility comes from. And then where we spend all of our time is just to kind of finish out everything else, which I guess is how I think of it. Yeah, so we'll go with that. So the preamble. We've seen this document metadata a couple times now. I've also got a check tagging status command or key, and then a math alt key. I'll get back to those later. Unicode math. And then if you just compile this with Lua LaTeX, most of your work is done, and we now have an accessible textbook. Let's see, so how do we want to think of the code? We are very used to, we compile our tech, and then we look at the output, and if it looks fine, great. We also need to think about that the source code does reflect what we might mean it to be, that we're not kind of shoving things around just because it looks nice. One way that I think about this is if I can look at the source code and figure out how I expect the output to be, that's good. If I need to be looking at the output, okay, I needed to shove this thing up, I need to shove this left, then I need to rethink how I'm approaching what I'm doing. The tagging code has a lot of useful messages that it'll put in the log if anything is going wrong. But that means that you want to be able to look through your log file and figure out if anything's going wrong, which means that you want to try and get rid of other messages in the log. So the overfull, the underfull boxes, fix those if we can and spot what's going wrong. Stop using tables to move things around because that's never been a good idea. The big thing that has really helped is that the calculus book really had a lot of semantic macros. So begin an example here, put a margin note here, and that makes it easier to read the code, makes it easier for the tagging code to read the code is essentially what it's doing. It also makes it much easier to customize things. that if I need to adjust how am I doing my examples so that they're better tagged, a better example, then I can just adjust a little bit in the preamble instead of going through and finding every single example. Okay, images. Images need alt text. We've been hearing about the images needing alt text with tech, but also with HTML and everything else for decades now. Right, so we need to go through the textbook and find all of the images and give them alt text. There are a few alternatives to alt text. If the image really isn't necessary, we can just mark it as an artifact, and then the screen reader will just skip over it entirely. We can also just call it actual text, and this is really if instead of a screen reader saying, hey, here's an image and let me describe this image, the screen reader just pretends that it's not even an image and just reads the text. So we can see that this should say University of North Dakota Mathematics and Statistics. So that'll be the actual text, and then as the screen reader won't even notice that there's an image, hopefully. So what do we want to keep in mind about this alt text? The sighted users are probably not going to see it. So we don't want anything important there. We want to keep it short. We want to keep it objective. I try to think about what does my audience need from this picture? Why is this picture here? The other thing I think about, especially for a graph, is how would I tell someone, here's how I want you to draw this graph? And so then if I can explain how to draw it, then they can draw it with their mind, and hopefully that gets them to see what I want them to see with it. Some guidelines that I've heard for alt text: you don't want to begin with image, because the screen reader will often say image, and then if you say image, now we have a nice stuttering effect. You don't want to repeat the caption. They have the caption, so you don't need to repeat that again. When keeping it brief, so at most 2 sentences is the idea. And the guideline I've seen is if you can't do that, then your alt text should point elsewhere for where you do have the longer description. I'll get back to that one. Okay. I get to interact with Ally. It's the accessibility checker that our university has. Let's see. So PDF 2.0 is where the math is very good and is very accessible. PDF 1.7, the math is not as accessible, and all of the formulas have alt text instead. Ally doesn't know about PDF 2.0, and so it wants all of its formulas to have alt text. And so that is that document metadata. I can then say, okay, I want my formulas to have alt text, and they will have alt text. The downside is that then screen readers ignore all of the MathML and just read the alt text, and that's not as accessible. So I try to avoid using math alt text if I can. With the textbook, that means I try to avoid putting that in our university system, and we just post that on the website, and then that's okay, because that's not smart enough to check for PDF 1.7 or 2.0. It's fine. And then a lot of what we've been talking about today, yesterday, tomorrow, this weekend, does take a lot of experience with tech and LaTeX to get working. I feel like alt text is writing alt text is a little bit on the easier end. And so actually what we did with our textbook was we found a work-study student that had more time than I did, and they wrote a majority of the alt text. And that worked out mostly. I needed to spot check a few things of, let's not use 2-6 to write a domain, because that means something else. But it worked out well. When I was talking about alt text, I did have a colleague ask, what alt text would you give for the snake lemma? Now, if you don't remember your homological algebra, this is the snake lemma. It is a 14-cell commutative diagram. We have A going to B or A prime, B going to C or B prime, C going to 0 or C prime, A prime going to B prime, all that. And then it's called the snake lemma because of the arrow D that starts at the top right and then snakes through the entire diagram to end up at the bottom left. So I guess my answer for this would be, if I had to give alt text for this, I would ignore the 2-sentence limit and I would just talk however much I wanted. Luckily, the snake lemma doesn't show up in calculus. What we do have, when we get to calculus 3 and multivariable calculus, one of the things I really like about the textbook is that we have used asymptote and media 9 to make a three-dimensional images that actually, if you're looking at this in Adobe, you can grab the image and you can spin it around and rotate it. Now then, how do you describe this? This is described something like a wedge where z is between 0 and 2x, and let's see, x is between 0 and 1 minus y squared. And I don't know. So that completely describes it mathematically. I don't know how well. Maybe the wedge is good enough to describe what's going on. But again, right, there's not a mathematical problem with too much text here. It's more just, are we annoying the reader by giving them too much text to read through? The other problem we have is toward the beginning of Calculus 1, where we're asking students to, okay, describe this function. Where is it increasing? Where is it decreasing? What are the limits? And then you run into the problem of like, well, what alt text am I supposed to give that they can't just then copy and paste that back for an answer? And I don't have a great answer to this. What I've kind of done is just describe it and not use the words increasing, decreasing, concave up, concave down. So this function starts at negative 2.5, goes in a straight line to negative 1, 1, where there's a hollow dot, and then there's a solid dot at negative 1, 0. It goes and up and peaks at negative 0.5, 0.6, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I've had good discussions with a colleague about this, but I don't have a good answer yet. That covers images, tables. We needed to make our tables accessible, and so for that we needed to say, okay, here are the headings for my table. So the header row, the header columns, there's a few multi-rows, and so we needed to, my understanding is, so multi-row is not compatible, but if you say this particular cell is a multi-row cell and it takes this many rows with the tag PDF code, then you're okay. This is all probably going to change. Multi-row, once that is more tagging accessible. And I don't know, my preference would be that header rows and header columns would move into the tabular, be there. Yeah, Frank agrees with me, so that'll work. And we can follow that with TechDoc LaTeX Lab table. Okay, so everything else. If we do that check tagging status key at the very beginning, then our log file will say, okay, here are the packages you are using. Here's their status on whether they're tagging compatible or not. You can also go to the tagging project's website and find those particular packages. For things that are labeled partially compatible or partially incompatible or whatever the phrases are, a lot of times there's a GitHub issue and you could go in there, and Ulrika has provided some code of, okay, if you just copy these 2 lines, you're good to go. QR code takes about a page, and it goes in there. Media 9 took several hundred lines of code, and I think I have that working, so I will not talk about that more. Other packages, so enum item, even with the templating, we were using enum item to change how various lists are formatted later on, setting up various environments. And so we switched that out for enum ext. I was using margin note very extensively. At the time, that was not compatible, so I switched that to marginalia. Now it is compatible, so I didn't need to do that work. Luckily, though, I mentioned that I wanted to try to do things in the preamble. So with my margin notes, there was just a specific command that said, okay, put a margin note here. And so when I needed to change things, I just needed to fix the preamble, and then that all worked. Title sec we were using, so I had to switch that out. As long as I'm talking about packages, Beamer needs to change to LTX talk. I'll come back to that. Let's see. So now we have what we think is an accessible document. We want to check that. A screen reader is where you want to start. Unfortunately, there's not many options. NVDA, JAWS, I think, although that costs money. Orca, although I have a Mac, so I need to use Windows. NVDA and JAWS are Windows, and then Orca's Linux, and I have a Mac. Worked out well. And not many PDF readers. So Adobe, Foxit, or Firefox, and that's about it. There's a little bit better on just automated verification. So VeraPDF is what the LaTeX team is using, and that goes through and just verifies everything that you have, and hopefully that passes. If it doesn't, the way I've set up the book is lots of sections. Each section gets input. Which meant that if I think there's a problem in a particular section, I can just have the same preamble, input that single section, and then go. And that compiles much more quickly. And then I can isolate the errors. The problem with VeraPDF is that if it does find an error, it will tell you where that error is according to the PDF structure, which is not exactly enlightening. PDFix, whatever, is another option. It has the same back end, but it has a graphical user interface, so you can actually figure out where your problems are. It doesn't have a command line at all. Okay. This is VeraPDF. This is when something went well, and hey, yes, this file is compliant. If it doesn't go well, then you get to find, okay, start at the root, then you document the structural root. KID number 0 is the document. Now find KID number 2130. Now find KID number 71. And there's a problem with the float, maybe. Okay, PDFX looks like this. It does list the tagging structure, so you can actually, there's been a few times where I would have an error VeraPDF would find an error, but PDFX would not. But I can use the tagging structure to figure out, okay, where, and I can drill down and follow that previous, I can follow this address to find what is the problem. With that previous problem, this is actually that same problem, and PDFX tells me it's right here. It's on, if you zoom in enough, you can see what page it's on, and this was because I put 2 captions into a mini page, and there's only 1 caption allowed, so I needed to go and fix that, but I knew where it was. Okay, so some misconceptions. I got this email from our IT. To keep the textbook in as a PDF would require a major cleanup to the tagging structure in Adobe. You could do it, but 1,000 pages is a lot. And Adobe, there's a lot of extra elements that are in there. I don't know where they came from. They may have come from your conversion from LaTeX to PDF. Let's see. So setting aside that we've miscapitalized LaTeX for no reason, there is a valid point here that what IT is used to for remediating a PDF is that you take a PDF that has come from on high, has been delivered to you, and now you go into Adobe and you go in page by page by page and fix every problem that Adobe finds. And the guideline I've seen is that you want to allot about an hour per page, which means that then you do not want to recompile your document, because as soon as you recompile, you have a new PDF and all your work is lost. So there is a valid point that compiling from TeX to a PDF and then using Adobe to remediate is not going to work. What I've been trying to explain to IT, and I don't know how well they have followed, is that the idea is that we are skipping the Adobe step of this, and we are just compiling and getting a good and accessible document in one step, not in Adobe. The other thing that Adobe that I'm having trouble explaining is that Adobe is checking 1.7, and that's why it's complaining about various extra elements. So mostly I'm doing what I'm doing and hope that they just let me do what I do. Let's see, a few final bits. So the LaTeX Tagging Projects website has documentation on all of this, and has the tagging status and many examples and all of that. I have this and then several other resources at my GitHub site. What else? So making it accessible is much more computationally intensive. So the calculus book, one run of LaTeX in the calculus book, I think is a few minutes, Lua LaTeX. To make it actually tagging takes, I think I found it about 7 times as long. So this is very much that if I have, I'll be compiling a section over and over and over to figure out, okay, am I getting the tagging correct? And then once I think I have the tagging correct, okay, include everything, turn on tagging, start compiling, turn it over to LaTeX MK, and go to bed. It takes more RAM. The PDF itself is a little bit bigger. So these numbers are all based on, I've done the calculus book. I've also now done a linear algebra book and a differential equations book. And so there's kind of that spread in these numbers. The last two, the strings and the hash, are related to when you start your compilation. Lua LaTeX says, okay, I want to set aside this much memory for the commands that I'm going to define, the control sequences that I'm going to define. Tagging takes a lot more of them, and so with the calculus book and the differential equations book, I am running out of that pool of items, which I get halfway through this hour-long process, and it just dies. Okay, so that you need to at the very beginning just increase. Okay, set aside this much space for your things. So one way to really help with that is, instead of that full document metadata command, if you just start with tagging equals off, then everything is defined, and so you won't have a compilation problem. But now you have a compilation that is basically on par with a an untagged compilation and about as fast and at about as much memory. So if you're trying to do the entire book, you can just focus on that part, tagging off, make sure that's working, looking how you want, and then turn tagging on and go to dinner. And then the last thing I want to say is I've said a couple times you want to try and just keep your edits in the preamble, hopefully, and not need to go into the rest of the book, but that may happen. So if you need to, you need to. And I think I will stop there. Yes?
So would you like to make changes to package like Media 9? Or those going to be sent upstream to the developers?
That is my goal, is to get that into Media 9. Yeah. Yeah, so I do want to try and get that into Media 9. When I've looked, there's something I don't quite understand about how Media 9 has coded the package, because if you look at it, it basically does everything twice, once if it's debugging and once if it's not. And
that's the we enjoy typing model.
yeah, I think it's the we don't want to put a conditional midway through the function, but essentially sockets are conditionals that are going to be midway through the function. So if I'm going to do that, I would like to at least get some sort of permission, although maybe I'll just upload it and ask forgiveness or something. I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Thanks. Can you get back to the previous slide? Yeah, so I'm curious about the contents of the remaining 25 slides that we didn't get to see.
Next talk.
Who we got? There we go.
I just wondered about captions versus alt text. And sometimes I feel like when I'm editing tugboat articles, the caption already said everything there is to say. And is there a way to pacify LaTeX and the screen, well, to make it still compliant but not specify it twice?
LaTeX itself, if you don't give alt text, LaTeX will just say, it'll put in the image, the file name. VeraPDF is fine with that. PAC actually says, this is suspicious. And we can kind of agree that that's should not be counted accessible. I don't quite know. I don't know what the accessible answer would be. I mean, from a usability standpoint, I think it would be great that yes, the caption explains everything, and so then maybe alt text just says image, look at the caption. I don't know.
Hello. For commutative diagrams such as the snake lemma, which are composed of nodes and directed edges, what would be wrong with just listing each node with its outgoing edges?
Yeah, probably, yeah. If you wanted to give alt text for that commutative diagram, you would probably just go through and I don't know how long that alt text would end up being, but you would want to just say, okay, I've got this node A, and it goes to A prime and B, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What would Arush say to yes?
So,
Here's a microphone.
yeah. I'm thinking. So, what diagram is this? Sorry, I don't know if I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's a grid of, let's say, 3x4 letters with
Okay.
arrows going left and down. and then there is one arrow that starts at the top right and winds its way down to the bottom left. Which mostly, except that you can't wave your hand as you say winding.
So I would do two things. Number one, the geometry kit. Number two, I would image map the hell out of this.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
I have a question actually, unless someone else wants to go first.
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go for it.
So you said you link to, if you have longer alt text, then you link to elsewhere. Like, did you? I don't know if you ever got into. How do you do that? Because you say you might explain more detail.
I have not done that. I went with the idea of ignoring the guideline on how long my alt text could be.
Okay, great. Yeah,
A lot of that is based on what our IT people say is best practices for alt text, which then, if you look at it, is really not necessarily related to math. It's just kind of more alt text in general. And they're okay if you have what is going to be very long alt text in general. Okay, sure, maybe you can put it elsewhere. In math, I don't know. Maybe. I think the idea would be that you would put it maybe in an appendix of, okay, here's the description of figure 1.2.3, and then you just however long you want, and then when you actually do in the alt text, then you would say, this is figure 1.2.3. The alt text is, the longer description is located in the appendix, and maybe you can put a link. Although I don't know if you can link in alt text very well. No, you can't.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because I don't know if you could do this in a PDF, but in HTML, at least, one thing that I've done before with alt text is that you can, because you mentioned like you can get more details if you want. You can add like a collapsible div. I don't know, it's a bit too technical maybe, but like something that expands when you click on it, so then it's not always there. But I don't know if you can do that in a PDF or not. So.
Yeah, PDFs are static. I mean, there is a way to put JavaScript into the PDF. I don't think we'll call that that necessarily accessible.
Nor acceptable.
Yeah,
No,
acceptable.
no.
So you're kind of stuck with a static document.
Okay, yeah.
Could you put a hyperlink into alt text, and then if someone immediately wants to have more information, they can activate the link and drop?
Ulrika is saying no, you cannot have a hyperlink in alt text.
But if thou must.
What you can.
Oh, here, hang on.
Oh,
hang on.
sorry.
I got it.
I need the micro. So that. What you can theoretically do is put an extended description as an associated file onto the structure. But you naturally need a tool who then tells you there is an associated file and allows you to retrieve it. That's a problem. The standard would allow it, but I don't think that we have the tools yet. But we could start to put the description in it and then start to complain why they aren't found. That's
Our project could make a PDF viewer that actually does it. I was just saying that our project could make the first implementation of that, and then maybe Adobe and whoever else is so embarrassed. I mean, that's the way it worked with the math stuff. I mean,
This is what I meant by finessing people.
Okay.
Anybody else? We good?
Thank you. I've stepped on the toe.